好，谢谢大家啊！今天相当荣幸来跟各位来分享这个题目啊。今天主要是谈到我们 AI 在银行方面的一些趋势跟应用啊。那么我先来开个头哈，等一下呢，第二个阶段就会交给那个 Renny 哈。那么麦肯锡呢，每年都会针对全球的银行业来进行一个调研，发一个报告哈。那么今年的报告刚刚发出来哈，如果各位在我们全球的网站上呢，应该可以看得到。那么其中一个关注点吧，每年的关注点，当然就是银行业的这个盈利。那么在这一页上看到的是 ROE 啊，是这个。净资产的回报率吧，这个 ROE 的情况啊。那么多年以来吧，你从2010年往后看吧哈，这个银行的 ROE 都并不太好了哈。那么我们长期的认为这个低利率的一个环境啊，是不利于银行的运营啊，包括这个利差啊会很低啊。那么近期吧，去年等等吧。终于出现转机哈，所以可以看到我们银行业的 ROE 是有上升的趋势哈。去年的数字全球来讲是达到13%。那么同样的，如果我们看这个这里左手边呢是 revenue 除以 asset， 就是收入啊除以资产，就有点像是一个 ROA 的概念啊，但是它的分子不是说 profit 啊，它的分子是收入，是 revenue 哈，营收。那么这样子来看呢，也是看到同样的趋势哈，在2022年或者甚至我们预估2023年呢，会有一个蛮不错的一个上升啊，在全球银行业的资产的回报方面。那么右手边呢是一个绝对值的图啊，那么它的单位呢是美元的trillion， 应该是万亿吧哦。那么所以可以看到全球银行业的一个税后的利润。税后的利润，今年我们估计会达到美元1.4个 trillion， 这个是前所未有的高啊哈，也是2017年可以说是翻倍了。但是啊，大家看看这个银行的股价哈，你去找一下吧，找一下，比如 Citibank 哈，你就知道啊，银行的股价并不好哈。这一页看的是它的一个 PB ratio 啊 ，PB ratio，股价跟净值的比哈，那么下面蓝色的线呢是银行业啊，不到1啊，只有0.8，而且呢尽管在过去2年我们说这个盈利啊、营收啊这情况都不错了哈，利差水准也扩大的情况之下呢，银行的这个估值并没有提高。那么上面的黑线就是全行业的所有的 industry 哈，全行业，那么这个达到2.7，几乎到3哦，所以跟银行业来讲有一个很大的差距。那么这些是什么行业？什么行业它的这个资产股价净值比啊才会高呢？第一最高的是 tech， 然后呢是 IT 跟 healthcare 等等等等。对吧？那么银行呢，就在这里最底下的那个0.8的那个。所以为什么无论你是微众银行，无论你是蚂蚁金服啊，你千万不要告诉你的投资者如果你要上市，千万不要告诉你的投资者是银行如果你告诉你投资者是银行呢，他就用这个0.8来给你估值你一定要告诉他们你们是科技公司科技公司，告诉他科技公司的话，就变成9.2变成9.2，所以因为今天呢，我们谈到这个 fintech 这个事情是吧？所以呢，这个是对我们来讲还是相当重要的一个课题。那么，如果我们从银行所发挥的功能来说我们把它分成3种。那么第一种呢，处理一些交易性的东西帮我们做支付啊等等一些做交易性的东西。那么第二呢是 distribution， 是分销银行有很多的分行，银行有很多的网上银行等等那么它有很大的 distribution 分销的网络，那这个东西值多少钱？ 那么最后呢，就是所谓 balance sheet 啊 ，balance sheet 就是我们一般意义上的存贷业务啊，我们吸收存款，跟着把钱贷出去啊。那么可以看到哈，资本的占用在左手边，资本的占用 balance sheet 的 activity 哈，就是资产负债表相关的活动呢，占了我们资本的70%。当然了，如果你是吸收存款放贷款，你是要 hold 资本的，对不对？这个也是法规的要求了。那么但是呢，它对于这个收入的占比呢，只有53啊，对于这个获利的占比呢，只有51哦。那就是说，其他的2个项目，尽管它占用的资本比较低啊，是16%跟14%，但是它贡献的一个收入、贡献的利润是比较高的。那么这也顺理成章的，我们可以看到右手边的数字，就是说，我们把银行的这个 ROE 来拆分啊，成为这3种不同的活动的话，那么可以看到，拿资产负债表出来啊做的生意，它的资本的回报哈，只有5%到8%啊，这是个单位数字的。那么如果是分销啊，是12到15；如果是交易性的东西，就是20到25啊。那么所以你去想象一个事情，你去想象你在电商上买东西，买到最后呢，问你要不要弄个分期，对吧？那你就分了，那等于说呢，你就问银行借钱了，对吧？分期来还给这个银行。那么在这个事情上面，银行拿出来的是资本。银行冒的是风险，那么做这笔贷款业务，做银行还要受监管，所以大家觉得这是很痛苦的东西。为什么这个电商他也不想做这个事情？那就找银行来帮他做。那这个客户是谁的？客户还是电商公司的，对不对？客户不是银行的，银行只是在后面提供一个呆呆的白牌的拿资本重资本受监管冒风险等等的一个业务所以这个业务市场资本市场觉得并不具吸引力，并不具吸引力。所以尽管我们看到银行的获利有所回升，银行的这个估值并没有随之升上来。好，那么在这3块业务里面或者在我们现在这个数位化的浪潮之下FinTech 这浪潮之下，很重要的一点还是在中间有一个技术，有一个科技，有一个 AI 在里头。那么横跨我们刚刚提到的3块不同的业务，3块不同的活动。对吧？那么包括这里右手边呢，它可以提升我们人员的一个生产力那么它可以让我们呢，就是说这个是应该是说这个数位年代5件要做的事情吧5件要做的事情吧那第一呢，就是利用这个技术，利用 AI 来提升我们的生产力。对吧？我们讲过，我们有人很担心说什么 Gen AI， 大家都没工作了，是吧？我觉得也可能不至于那么严重但是的确的，怎么样把一些我们也不太想做的，对吧？也不是那么高端的一些职位吧，或者一些工作吧让这个 AI 就来帮我们做掉了，对吧？像很多的可以编程，像很多的可以有一些提供一些这个专家的系统甚至产生一些数位营销的一些内容，很快可以写出来，还写得很好等等就提升我们的这个生产力。那么第二呢，我们银行要思考我们的资产负债表，对吧？有没有一些呢可以轻资本的项目？有没有一些可以通过比如说是证券化呀，或者其他的方式尽量不要自己拿资产负债表出来，拿资本出来做生意那么 transaction 的东西呢，它这里讲说 scale or exit， 就是交易性的东西。 交易性的东西，如果你做的真的够大，比如说你是一个全球性的银行，你是一个汇丰银行你帮企业进行一些现金的管理的活动全球的汇款的，对吧？所以它也牵涉到不同的货币的币种。那么这样的利用全球网络来做一个交易性的东西，那还是有利可图的。但是如果你没有这样的一个规模，那么这个东西你要不要做多半来讲，我们认为交易性的东西或者说一些支付也不是很赚钱了那么然后呢，就是说 distribution 第4项就是这个分销非常的重要我们要利用我们的不同的通路包括实体的，包括线上的，来跟客户加强它的互动，加强它的粘性。那么最后呢，就是管控风险今年年初的时候呢，其实在美国或者全球的银行业都发生了很大很严重的事情，对吧？美国发生了它有史以来最大的3大银行的倒闭的其中一家，那么在今年就倒掉了 SVB。上一次有这么大的银行倒掉是 Washington Mutual。那时候是差不多金融海啸，2008年的事情，所以这么多年没发生过这个事情。今年3月SVB 就倒掉了。SVB 倒掉，我想你们台湾也有一位资深的银行家，他是这样讲，他就是说用手指头就可以挤兑了。现在以前挤兑还要排个队，对吧？也排蛮长的老实讲那你挤兑要有耐心，要有时间现在不用了，现在你在 App 一按，钱就跑了，对不对？多方便啊！所以这个流动性风险跟过去的是不可同日而语你可能没想到那么另外，当然你 OpenAI 的 Open Banking 等等，你的用 API， 你用你的系统能够在这么多的客户的手上可以有你的 App， 可以就在手机上就可以做 transaction 的话以前是要你在核心系统上做的所以你的风险你怎么来管控？比如说一些网络的一些诈骗，一些攻击等等，这些也变成我们在数位时代的一些话题那么往下呢，我们请 Renny 来跟大家分享一下银行业实实在在的一些趋势，跟我们看到全球银行基于我们之前看到的一些情况，他们也做了好多事情来因应那么在这里呢 ，Renny 会跟各位来分享。Renny, I'm handing over to you. We're on page 8.
So just taking off from where Winston left off, if you look at the 5 trends in the center of all of that is a lot of the core aspects of tech and AI. And this, in our view, will fundamentally change the business of banking. Now, if we go through these points in this page, I will quickly comment on them, and then we will do a deep dive on some of these. The first is this notion of integrated omni-channel. I think this notion of we are in a world where it's no longer about the app and the call center, and it's about how you go multimodal across voice, text, video, across human and machine in a very seamless way. So the notion of actually going multimodal, omni-channel in an integrated way is going to be the key challenge. The notion of a separate call center with a separate number existing might become history in the future, and we'll talk more about it. The second is this notion of engaging with consumers. Banks have multiple channels. Most often, you got to call a call center, or you go to a mobile app. On a mobile app, you tend to click a menu, which opens up another nested menu. And sometimes consumers, when a bank makes any changes to the app, say, hold on, don't make any changes. I've just about got used to this menu structure. But that's not a natural way consumers should be interacting with a financial institution. The future of customer engagement will be more conversational. It'll be text, voice. That's a more natural way to actually communicate and get things done. And we'll talk more about it. The third is the notion of personalization at scale. And we talk about this at 5 levels, level 1 to level 5. Most banks, some of the best banks, tend to be at level 3. whereas most consumer tech and digitally native companies are at level 5. Level 5 corresponds to a one-to-one real-time personalization, and we'll talk more about it. The fourth is around content as a product. Most banks and financial institutions think of the underlying product, the mortgage, the savings account, the current account as the product, and get into a push sales mode. This notion of actually engaging consumers with content creates a lot more stickiness and allows you to do what's called gradual engagement. One of the financial institutions in the region has 10% of their web traffic coming from content on taxation. They don't sell any services around taxation, but that creates the traffic and creates the engagement, which allows them to actually move them through the funnel. Point number 5 is around neo cores. I think we've been in a world where a number of banks globally are still on mainframes, most are on prem, but there's a fundamental challenge with that technology, because in that technology, every product is a system. And the reason that's happened is because of how product vendors responded to regulation. And a typical bank has a technology estate of hundreds, sometimes thousands of source systems, all of which make any form of technology innovation or application of AI much, much harder, much slower, and much more expensive. Neocores are a new class of core banking systems that shift from product being a system to product being code. So I could write a product, for example, which is a new product, which calculates interest on the mortgage, net of balances on the savings or current account, and I could write it today as code and I could offer it to customers tomorrow morning. For a traditional bank to do this, it could take several months, if not a year. Number 6, and all of us are familiar with this, is notion of embedding into ecosystem, the notion of embedded finance, on how you actually operate in that world. And number 7 is, increasingly open banking is becoming a norm in many markets. Data privacy is becoming increasingly important. The ability to actually manage data is going to become a competitive advantage. And without it, it's going to be almost impossible to apply AI at enterprise scale. It's much easier to apply it in the context of a fintech, which is doing one product, but in the context of a universal bank, without having data as a strategic asset, it's going to be impossible to apply AI. Now, let me spend a few minutes on a couple of these. I think we talked about multimodal, integrated, omni-channel. Consumers are already straddling across multiple channels, and this is true even in categories which are as physical as car purchase, but of course, completely the case in other categories. So increasingly, this is going to become important. We're also seeing, if you look at just the experience in the omni-channel, the ability to actually integrate at the top of the funnel. I think most banks and financial institutions are able to do it when it's an existing customer who's inside their app. But if you're at the top of the funnel on the open web, how do you really move context across channels? This notion of integrated omni-channel and giving an experience which is very seamless. If you had a conversation at a branch, and you happen to call the call center, you go back to your app, that needs to get reflected. So I do think the future of engagement and the future of the app will look very different. And with the advent of generative AI, the notion of having, apps as being a gateway to a multimodal engagement where voice, video, text all happen through the same interface. You don't have a separate number to call center. You have, AI assistants, or you can click a button, talk to somebody on voice or on video. What you see on the app and what somebody else sees on the app would be completely different. The notion of engagement, which kind of kicks in, where you're not just about selling products. You obviously want to make it very easy to do transactions, but you also want to make sure there's enough content out there, which makes the customer come back to the app. Therefore, all the complexity sits in the AI behind the screen, and not complexity in the large libraries of static code, which typically are there in existing banking apps. And this is true, for a direct customer interface, but this is also true for assisted sales. For example, in this visual that you see, you have an advisor talking to a customer. But if you look at the right-hand side of the screen, the advisor has actual real prompts coming in, which are narrations built off chain technologies across AI, Gen AI, and others, which allows the agent to react based on the customer's question, the customer's voice of tone, their facial expressions, and combine the emotion and the historical data on the customer and the public data on the customer to be able to have the right conversation. What's more, with this, with the use of AI, is that every, let's say, 10-second interval can be represented as a green, a yellow, or a red dot, which reflects the experience the customer has during the conversation. It's a green dot if the customer has a positive experience, is a yet red dot if it's actually a negative experience. And you can have an average score for that experience the customers had. In this case, it was 91%, which is great. But you could have a scenario in which the customer is not happy. It's more reds like you see on this, and the overall satisfaction is, let's say, 10%. Now, you don't no longer need to ask the customer whether you are happy or unhappy with the interaction. The technology already knows. You could do a proactive outreach to the customer, say, I'm sorry you had a bad experience. You can also create training content for the advisor to make sure that they know what they did wrong, so that the next time they have an interaction with the customer, it changes. So the first point is around the whole notion of integrated omni-channel call center, app, branch, context gets moved. It's multimodal, voice, text, video, human or machine, all happening seamlessly. That's one big change. The second is the nature of interaction. I think even before GPT-4 came into the picture, it was becoming clear that 70 to 80% of consumer interactions with a bank can be handled by machines, only if you set it up in the right way. And this could be about servicing transactions, it could be even about just pure engagement. And we have many solutions out there, and many of them were built of GPT-2. With GPT-4, it becomes even more easier. The experience becomes a lot more natural. Let me play a video to just give you an interaction of something that was built in the older GPT-2 era. It took a lot of effort, but it's been out there in the public domain. So I can just play this video to give you a sense.
Meet Erica, your virtual financial assistant in the Bank of America mobile app, here to help you bank. Erica can help you pay your bills anytime, from almost anywhere. If your debit card goes missing, Erica's got you covered.
I can't find my card. Oh, it's all good. I got it this time.
And with Erica, you can quickly send money to your friends,
I'll pay you back.
no matter where they bank.
Oh. It's been a while since we've had lunch together.
It hasn't been that long.
Need to find a past transaction? Erica makes it easy.
Erica, when was my last expense at the Lime Truck?
Here's what I found. Your last transaction at the Lime Truck was December 15th.
Way too long. No. Are you serious?
Erica, please unlock my debit card.
No problem. Your card is now unlocked and ready to use.
Meet Erica, your virtual financial assistant. Meet Erica, your...
So as you saw there, I mean, the need for a more traditional app with nested menus and all goes away. You can use text. Your app could be the equivalent of a Google search bar or something I showed earlier, where you can speak, type, and get something done. You can block your credit card. You can figure out when you last went to a Starbucks to have coffee, and you will get all of it narrated back to you in your local language. And this is actually will completely change the way banking happens in terms of experience, but also dramatically changes the cost structure, because you no longer are running complex, expensive channels like what happens today. The third point I was referring to was this notion of level 5 personalization. What you see on this page is, when you think about personalization, you could go from level 5, 1, which is largely a broadcast, level 2, where you have good segmentation, level 3 is you have thousands of microsegments, level 4 is 1:1, and level 5 is 1:1 real time. Most financial institutions, good ones, actually tend to be at level 3. You see some of the more digitally native consumer tech companies tend to be at level 5. So that's a big shift in terms of capability, because that it changes the way you interact with consumers. But to be able to do that, you also need a whole set of machine learning models, right? As they say, we'll have a future where there'll be more machine learning models in a bank than employees in the bank. And what you see from the across the customer life cycle, from new to bank acquisition or credit decisioning or monitoring or cross sell or servicing, as we just talked about, you could have underlying models which are allowing you to make decisions, not in 100%, but for 70-80% of consumers, which completely changes the experience and the cost structure. So this decisioning layer becomes quite important. What's also interesting now is with the advent of Gen AI, the ability to use unstructured data, which could be text, images, video, or voice, which are unstructured data. You could use Gen AI to pick signals from that to be able to feed your traditional models, but on the right hand side, your traditional machine learning models, which is on even underwriting or acquisition or servicing. So you can pick unstructured data, put it through a Gen AI capability, and feed it into a traditional machine learning model that allows you to make the decisions we talked about on the previous page even more effectively, even with even more context and even more predictive power. The fourth point I want to talk about was around content as a product. I think most financial institutions tend to be good at sales, but they tend to be terrible at consumer marketing. And I think the art of consumer marketing is the notion of moving from what I call as a point of checkout to the top of the funnel, which basically means you engage with customers a lot more early and a lot more gradually. So the reason for this is one that I strongly believe the share of time precedes share of wallet. The more you can engage with customers and the more you build trust, eventually you're going to actually have a higher share of wallet. The more you actually engage, the more you understand what the customer needs, which can allow you to figure out what to sell at the right time. The engagement has to be partly created by differentiated content. So the example I was talking about on the taxation side was that when you do a Google search, organically the content is so good that particular bank was showing up as a top 3 search. They were not doing paid marketing, it was all organic traffic. So the organic traffic was created by high quality content which really mattered to your target segment, and you were able to actually provide it to consumers in a seamless way. The fourth point of this page is around it being personalized and gradual. The notion of gradual engagement. Do not sell till you are sure the customer is in the zone to buy. If you keep bombarding customers with messaging around how your mortgage is better, how your current account is better, they may not be in the zone to buy and they switch off. Then after that, whatever messaging you send them, they don't internalize. And finally, you need to have a digitally native experience. And so there are different ways you build engagement. I talked about content, but there are a few other ways that you see on this page. It could be through gaming. Some of you do it. It could be through social. Customers like you are doing the following. It could be through user-generated content. It's which content your own customers are generating, which helps other customers to engage with you. Or it could be personal financial management, where you're actually providing advice on customers' holistic financial management, on expenses, on investments, and across that whole, on borrowing across that whole spectrum. So there was a fourth point, which we think is going to be a major trend. The fifth I referred to was this notion of neocores and new core banking systems. Banking has a long history, and with long history comes a lot of legacy on technology, and this makes existing banks finding it very hard to adopt in an enterprise basis the latest in financial technology. And I think what's happening with the biggest change with neocores is that you're able to shift from product being a system to product being code, which means you can design innovative products, you can do it quickly, you can do it at low cost, and you can get it out to the market rapidly and differentiate vis-a-vis other competitors. So this is a big trend which we think increasingly more and more banks are going down this path. We're seeing many global institutions do this. It allows you to actually offer products which are completely innovative. For example, have a credit line against the investment holding that you have. So the customer doesn't need to sell the investments if they need liquidity. Being able to bundle between debit and credit. being able to bundle between a mortgage and a current account, being able to, as a small business customer, being able to combine your personal and business in a very flexible way when it comes to getting liquidity. All of this is very hard to do on a traditional core system because it's expensive, takes time, and pretty clunky. With these neo core systems, this becomes a real possibility. Leading banks across the world are doing this. One of the most known examples of this is Intesa Sanpaolo's largest bank, Italy, which has been on this journey and a very ambitious plan to move their entire retail bank onto a neo-core. Maybe I'll wrap up quickly. I was just talking about neo-cores and some of the banks globally which are going down this path. One of them is Intesa Sanpaolo, which is the largest bank in Italy, which has been on a journey to not just launch new products, but move the entire existing retail banking customer base onto a neo-core. They're probably the most advanced globally on this migration. And we're going to see a lot more banks do this to get the competitive advantage and the flexibility to launch new products at low cost and retire some of the technical debt and the legacy that they actually have. The last point I wanted to close with was around data capability. Now, increasingly, without having the data capability, it's impossible to use Gen AI, and other advanced technologies in a seamless way. And part of it is because of regulations, part of it the data privacy, part of it is because of the data estate of banks. Most banks have hundreds of source systems. What you see on this page is the rows represent the different source systems, and there could be dozens, if not hundreds, of those source systems. The columns represent the different data domains. For most traditional banks and financial institutions, the same data field exists in different data sources with different values. So knowing the golden source of truth and the data lineage becomes quite important, without which you cannot let loose a machine on the data, and you cannot get the full power of AI. And this is something that the banks have been behind the curve in many markets. Most of them move the data into one place, but that's just the start of a problem, because the real thing is, how do you have a data platform which allows you to track golden sources, lineage, which allows you to use AI in a much more seamless way. One of the most important aspects of the data capability is having a customer data platform that not just has the static master domains and the demographics of the customer, but also real-time transaction data and derived data, the combination of which allows you to do level 5 personalization, allows you to respond real-time to what the customer is doing, is able to actually move context across channels, and this data capability becomes quite important to actually to unlock tech and AI. So I'll wrap up by saying that we are in the midst of a very eventful period. We're in the midst of another technology disruption in financial services, and we do think this will play out over the next several years and has already been underway for the last few. The future, as we discussed, will be integrated multimodal, omni-channel across voice, text, video, human and machine in a seamless way. The interactions will become more conversational, less static menus, but more conversational with voice and text. It'll become personalized, level 5 personalization. Content will become a more important form of engagement. Neocores we talk about will totally change the tech estate of banks. And of course, ecosystems will become even more prominent, and the data capability will become super important for banks to be able to pull all of this off. With that, let me pause. Back to you, Winston.